Hello and welcome to another new episode of Learning Simplified. Now in the preceding tutorial, we can see that so far we have built our template with the aid of pure HTML only. There's no CSS style attributes are being imposed to it, so we haven't made any kind of customization. To build up our code, we have just used some table elements and we can see that this is the result. Rest of the things are quite okay, but while we are about to build up our display section into the header, we can see that this is the result. The background image is not working properly. The actual intention was to build up something like this. As we can see that this is an image which will be immediately covering up the whole display section. But instead, while we look into our browser, we can see that the image itself is not covering up the display banner section. Else it is practically repeating itself again and again. This is not what exactly we want. We want a single image to cover up the whole device with. In that particular case, it is practically impossible to build it up without adding some styling properties to it. There is the limitation of using pure HTML only without using any kind of CSS, and from this is where actually the necessity of using CSS emerges out. We need to add some styling properties in an order to make it proper, to make it appear proper into our web page. In that essence, the first thing before we make any kind of changes into the code, into our root directory, we need to create a folder where it will be known as CSS folder. And into this folder, we will be creating a file. We will be naming it as style.css. So we had practically created a style.css file inside a folder which is known as CSS. We have created this CSS folder separately. We have kept this images folder separately. So the purpose of CSS folder is to hold up all the CSS related files into, and the objective of this images folder is to hold all the images inside it. And we have kept all the HTML files right outside both the folders that we had created inside our root directory or root folder. Now we are ready to go along with it. So in the first case, we need to head back to the style.css. First of all, we will be mentioning this is a CSS comment as been known to us, and we will be mentioning here as CSS document. Next, we are now going to create our very first CSS rule here. We are practically customizing the HTML document, and we are mentioning that the background color of this HTML document should be something like this one. So this is just a test background image. We won't be keeping it up all day long. We are just testing whether this CSS document style is being connected with this main HTML page or not. Now, in this case, we will be keeping things separated. So instead of project with HTML code.html, now we will be creating a new file right outside both the directories that we had created on purpose. We will be now creating another HTML file which should be known as HTML with CSS.html. So this is another file which is right now created, and this is exactly where we are about to connect our style.css. So here in the very first case, we will be now creating the HTML structure regarding this matter, and in the first case we will be mentioning the doc type HTML type. So why this doc type HTML? This is how we practically declare an HTML5 page, and in order to create a responsive page, it goes better with the HTML5 instead of with HTML. So that is why we have practically created this doc type HTML declaration in the first case. Next, we need to mention the HTML language, which here we mentioned as EN. Next comes the head section. So within this head section, in the first case, we want to declare the meta char set. This practically defines. So this is the meta char set, and we will be using this UTF-8 right over here. Now, what is the purpose of this meta char set? It is practically the type of encoding with which the machine reads the type input from a user. So all it is going to do, it is going to use this UTF-8 character encoding into our web page. This is the first thing. Next, we wish to keep our website mobile responsive, right? So that is why we need to declare it right over here. In the first case, we will be now mentioning meta name as viewport. Next, we will be using this content. So here within this content, we will be now mentioning width equals to device width, and the initial scale of this web page, initial scale, it should be zooming in to 1.0. Sorry. So all it is going to do, it is going to scale our web page into the browser 1.0. That means there won't be any magnified zooming in of our web page. Everything will be normal, in proper proportion, in proper dimension into our browser, and it will be immediately scaled down to a device width of the device width which is being used to display that browser. So that is why we have mentioned it right over here. Now in the last case, we will be mentioning, so you may make usage of something else like this meta name description, meta name content, where we may use the keywords, you may make it SEO friendly, but right now these are the very two basic rudimentary things to declare our web page responsive first and to encode the character. In the next case, we will be using a title. So here we may write it as HTML with CSS. Now in the last case, we wish to link the style.css that we had created right over here. So the style.css, it practically resides within the CSS folder. So in the first case, whenever we are referring to this href, we are mentioning it as, in the first case, the containing holder here, container folder that we had created regarding this respect, and it is CSS folder. Name of the folder is CSS, and the name of the file is style with along with the extension name .css. So this is the complete path of this file which should be mentioned right over here. In the next case, we need to mention the relevance, which is Stylesheet and the type is text by CSS. So everything is right now in order. We have practically created this web page along with this doc type HTML declaration. We have created this head section. In the similar way, we need to mention the body part, but right now we won't be creating anything into our body part. First of all, we would like to check that the linking between the HTML file and the Stylesheet.css file is practically done, and in that order let's press Ctrl S and so here it goes. This is the file that we had created. Right now we will be opening it up along with the Firefox document, and we can see that everything is in order. The CSS file is right now linked with the HTML file that we have created. The next thing that stands before is to code up each and everything inside that right now we can see right over here. So here goes the header section, next comes the body layout section, next comes the grouped layout section, and at the end we have a footer section. This is what we need to build up into our web page. So this is what we will be doing in our next tutorial, where we will be coding our HTML file along with the CSS file that we had created.